I was frozen in place, lying in my old childhood bedroom. My body wouldn't move, my lungs barely worked, and my mind was screaming while I just lay there. I couldn't shout. I couldn't run. I could only hear everything around me. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, slow and purposeful. The door to my room never shut. It stayed cracked open. From the darkness, I heard my sister's voice, steady and calm. "Just make it look natural." Then a man I'd never seen before walked in. He leaned over me and checked my pulse like it was part of a routine. That's when I realized this wasn't some kind of emergency. This was worse. He wasn't here to help. He wasn't here to save me. I stayed locked inside my body, completely paralyzed. Heavy, like it didn't even belong to me anymore. I couldn't scream, couldn't move. I just listened. The steps in the hallway were slow and deliberate. The door still opened just enough. And my sister's voice, soft and steady again. "Just make it look natural." Then he entered, a stranger. He leaned over my bed, checked my pulse like it was no big deal. And in that moment, the truth hit me hard. This wasn't some freak accident. This had been planned. And whoever he was here for next, it wasn't me. I was just in the way. I was someone in the family who needed to disappear. My name is Rachel. I'm 37 years old. And for as long as I can remember, I've been good at making myself invisible, even while sitting right in front of people. I live in Virginia now, far from the house I grew up in. I work as a senior data analyst. It's a quiet kind of job, steady, precise. I like numbers. Numbers don't care about your last name. They don't lie or play favorites. When something doesn't add up, it eventually shows. My family never worked like that. From the outside, we looked completely normal. A nice house in a quiet Pennsylvania town. Framed family photos on the walls. Holiday dinners that always smelled like turkey and something slightly burned. If you visited once a year, you'd think we were picture perfect. But inside that house, everything ran on rolls. And mine? I was the extra. My dad, Richard, cared more about control than conversation. He didn't ask questions, he just made statements. My mom, Gloria, learned early that silence kept things calm, so she played along. And Lena, my little sister? She was the star. Loud, magnetic, always acting like the whole room was hers to command. Growing up, I figured out quick that praise wasn't handed out evenly. If Lena did something well, it was celebrated. Proof our parents had done something right. If I did well, it was brushed off as luck or just ignored altogether. The only person who really saw me was my grandmother, Eleanor. She used to let me hang around after dinner while everyone else left the table. She'd pass me a warm mug of tea and say, "You notice things. That matters." When she died, something went cold in the house. I remember watching my dad at her funeral. No tears, just this weird kind of peace on his face. I tried to explain it away at the time. Everyone grieves differently, I told myself. Before she passed, Grandma Eleanor gave me a small tin box. "Don't open it in front of your father," she said. "Wait until you're really on your own. Then you'll understand." I never opened it. I figured it was just something sentimental. Nothing serious. Years later, after my mom had knee surgery, I drove back to Pennsylvania to help out. Took 2 weeks off work. Long enough to fall back into the old pattern, cooking, cleaning, and mostly staying out of everyone's way. Right before I left Virginia, I got a letter. Something about unreported income. A big number. Money I'd never seen. I assumed it was some kind of mix-up and didn't give it much thought. I should have. That letter wasn't a mistake. It was the first sign, proof that something my family had been hiding was starting to crack open. The first few days back home felt like slipping into a version of myself I thought I'd outgrown. I got up early, made coffee my mom barely drank. Helped her to the couch. Changed her bandages. Sorted her pills into tidy little rows for the week. Dad lingered in the background, standing in doorways like a manager, always giving orders but never lifting a finger. Lena showed up twice. Each time she was dressed like she was heading somewhere better. She took selfies with Mom on the couch, her arm posed just right, her smile angled for the perfect post. "Taking care of her," she wrote. She was gone within 20 minutes. No questions. Nobody ever asked any. By the fourth night, the exhaustion had settled deep into my bones. That house had a way of wearing you down quietly. Like a slow leak you don't notice until there's nothing left. That evening, Lena appeared in my doorway holding a mug. "You've been doing a lot." she said, her voice softer than I'd heard in years. This should help you sleep. The tea smelled lightly sweet. Chamomile, maybe. Or something pretending to be. I hesitated just long enough to feel silly for hesitating. She was my sister. This was my childhood home. I took the mug and drank it. Less than 30 minutes later, my legs gave out first. Nothing dramatic. Just a strange heaviness, like my body had stopped listening to me. I tried to stand but didn't make it past the edge of the bed. Then my arms went. Then my fingers. Panic hit hard, but my mouth wouldn't work. I was awake, fully awake, but trapped. Through the narrow crack in my door, I saw a thin slice of hallway light. A shadow moved, then paused. Lena's voice drifted in, low and controlled. Just do what Dad asked. The door didn't open all the way. It stayed slightly ajar. Footsteps crossed into the room. Careful steps, like whoever it was didn't want to leave evidence behind. I couldn't turn my head, but I felt the mattress dip beside me. 2 fingers pressed into my neck, checking my pulse. She's still breathing, a man muttered. This wasn't supposed to hit her this hard. My stomach dropped. Lower your voice, Lena snapped. She won't remember anything. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, locked on a crack I remembered from when I was 12. Dad's voice followed. This is the only way. Once the hearing happens, it won't matter, Lena added. Hearing. That word cut through the fog sharper than anything else. This wasn't about rest. This wasn't concern. This was a plan. The man hesitated. This feels wrong. You're already here, Lena said. Just make it look natural. They left the room. The door clicked shut softly. And in that silence, something inside me shifted. This wasn't sibling rivalry. It wasn't neglect. This was intentional. My family wasn't trying to protect me. They were trying to erase me. And whatever that hearing was, I knew one thing for sure. If I stayed in that house until morning, I wouldn't be leaving on my own terms. Time stretched in strange ways after they left. Minutes dragged like hours. Hours blurred together without edges. The drug loosened its grip slowly, starting with my fingertips. A faint tingling. Pins and needles. Pain I actually welcomed because it meant I was coming back. I kept my eyes closed. I slowed my breathing. I needed them to believe I was still out. Sometime later, the door creaked again. Lighter footsteps this time. Lena's perfume reached me before her voice did. She stood there longer than necessary, watching. Waiting. Still out, she murmured to herself. The door closed again. When I was sure she was gone, I opened my eyes. The room was dim, lit only by streetlight bleeding through old curtains. My body felt like it had been dragged over gravel, but I could move, barely. That's when I saw it. On the floor beside my bed, half hidden near the nightstand, was a small white card. I slid off the mattress, my legs shaking, and picked it up with clumsy fingers. A name. A title. Nothing else. Private investigator. My heart started racing again, but this time it wasn't panic. It was clarity. Lena wasn't smart enough to plan something like this. She followed directions. She didn't design schemes. Someone else had. Before I could think any further, I heard my father's voice echo down the hallway. Sharp. Controlled. Awake in the way that meant decisions had already been made. Is it done? A pause. Good. The hearing's soon. Keep her calm until then. Calm. My stomach twisted. This wasn't about one night. This wasn't a mistake. There were documents involved. Timelines. A future where I didn't get to speak for myself. I waited until the whole house fell silent. Getting dressed felt like trying to move through water. Every step slow, every sound way too loud. The floorboards groaned beneath me like they were accusing me. I crept past my parents' room, then Lena's door, pausing just long enough to hear her steady breathing on the other side. The front door opened with a quiet click. Cold air hit me in the face like a warning. I didn't stop walking until I reached my car. It wasn't until I'd driven 20 minutes that the shaking in my hands finally started to ease. I pulled into a small roadside stop and turned the engine off. Just sat there in the dark, trying to breathe through the fog still clinging to my mind. I took out the white card and stared at it. Calling felt dangerous. Not calling felt worse. The phone rang 3 times. Then someone picked up, groggy at first until I said my name. You were in my room, I told him. You checked my pulse. Silence. You're awake, he said. Finally. You're not supposed to be. I heard everything, I said. My sister. My father. The hearing. Another pause, heavier, longer. Then you need to listen, he said. Because what they're doing isn't just a family matter. It's legal. And it's already in motion. I closed my eyes. For years, I thought disappearing into the background kept me safe. That night, I realized the truth. It made me the perfect target. And if I wanted to take my life back, I couldn't stay silent anymore. Marcus didn't sugarcoat anything. What your father filed, he explained later that morning over coffee in Virginia, is a guardianship petition. If it goes through, he'll control everything. Your finances, your decisions, even where you live. I watched the steam rise from my mug. On what grounds? I asked. Incapacity. He nodded. Financial irresponsibility. Emotional instability. I almost laughed. Almost. For months, Marcus went on. He's been building a paper trail. Payments, bills, bank accounts, everything designed to make it look like you were losing control. And money's been moved around under your name to back it up. And my sister? I asked. He paused. She thinks she's protecting your parents. Your father showed her documents, fakes. She believes you've been stealing. Something in my chest twisted. Not out of sympathy. Not even anger. Just clarity. Marcus slid a folder across the table. There's more. But if we're going to stop this, we need a lawyer. Today. And that's how Sandra Chin came into my life. She didn't waste a second on small talk. She asked sharp questions, wrote fast without looking up. When I told her what had happened that night in my bedroom, her jaw clenched, just barely, but I noticed. This isn't just financial abuse, she said. It's coercive control. And the timing matters. When's the hearing? Friday, I told her. She checked her watch. Then we move fast. That afternoon, back in my apartment, I finally opened the tin box my grandmother had given me all those years ago. Inside, I found a folded document and an old letter, yellowed with age. Her handwriting was shaky but familiar. She wrote about my father filing false financial statements after her death. About money that was meant for me. About how she feared he'd never stop unless someone stood up to him. The paper underneath was her original will. Sandra read it twice, then let out a slow breath. This changes everything. By Thursday night, we had the full picture. Something my father never expected I'd be able to build. A trail of financial records, proof that the accounts were tied to him, and a timeline that destroyed his entire narrative. Friday morning, I walked into the courthouse wearing a navy suit I'd owned for years, but never felt strong enough to wear. My father was already seated, looking confident, his arms stretched across the back of the chair like he owned the place. My mother sat beside him, hands folded in her lap, eyes low. Lena wasn't there. When Richard saw me walk in, his face shifted. For the first time in my life, he didn't bother hiding the shock. You shouldn't be here, he said under his breath as I passed him. I didn't say a word. I took my seat beside Sandra and laid my hands flat on the table. They didn't shake. The hearing began exactly how he thought it would. His lawyer started by talking about family, about concern, about a daughter who'd somehow lost her way. They handed the judge a neat stack of documents, carefully chosen, selective, designed to frame a narrative. Then Sandra stood up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't rush. She simply started pointing things out. The wrong address listed as my residence, the missing notifications, the suspicious timing of financial transactions. She used the word misrepresentation, then manipulation, and finally fraud. That's when the judge's face changed. Sandra requested the court review my grandmother's original will and submit it as evidence. She explained that the funds my father claimed I'd mishandled, they were never mine to begin with. Then she asked me to speak. I answered every question calmly. About my job, my finances, my budget, my savings. I explained how I handled my own life. The court evaluator started to look confused, like he couldn't figure out why the petition had even been filed. The room went completely still. The judge dismissed the guardianship petition right then and there, then ordered a formal investigation into how it had even made it that far. Richard stood too quickly. This is a misunderstanding, he said. Sit down, the judge replied. And I watched something in him break. Not fear of punishment, but fear of being seen for who he really was. Outside the courtroom, Lena found me. Her face was pale. "You lied," she said. "You let us think." "No," I cut her off. "I just stopped correcting you." She started to argue, then didn't. For once, she looked uncertain, like she didn't know which version of reality to grab onto. Over the next few weeks, the truth started coming out piece by piece. Investigators followed the money trail. They found the forged signatures, the accounts that led straight back to my father. Everything he'd accused me of doing, he had done himself. When charges were filed, he never called, never apologized. He told people I'd turned everyone against him. The sentencing, he spoke just once. "My daughter is unstable," he said. "She's always been jealous." The judge nodded and said calmly, "The evidence suggests otherwise." Then came the sentence. A long one. Lena's case came next. The court acknowledged her role, but also how much she'd been misled. She got probation and court-ordered counseling. She came up to me afterward, her eyes red. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I thought I was helping." "You didn't ask," I said. "That matters." She nodded, and I could tell for the first time she actually heard it. My mother? She stayed silent. But this time her silence didn't protect anyone. It spoke volumes. When it was all over, I stood outside the courthouse alone. The air was sharp with winter. I thought I'd feel victorious. I didn't. What I felt was steady. That night at the doorway didn't destroy me. It revealed them. And for the first time, I walked away not invisible but real. The weeks that followed passed quietly, like the world was finally breathing again. The investigation went exactly the way the evidence pointed. My father's lies fell apart, first on paper, then in court. The money he accused me of mismanaging was traced straight back to him. The forgeries were confirmed. The pattern was clear, undeniable. His sentence came down on a cold, gray morning, and it made one thing crystal clear: this wasn't some family squabble. It was criminal. When they took him away, he never looked at me. Not once. And in that moment, I realized he never really had. Lena's outcome was different. She got probation, counseling, consequences, but not forgiveness. She stood outside afterward, looking smaller somehow, like she'd lost the borrowed certainty she'd carried for years. She said she was sorry, and I believed she meant it. But that didn't mean we could go back. My mother eventually left the house she'd hidden inside for so long. Silence couldn't protect her anymore. It just followed her somewhere new. I went back to Virginia and bought a little place by the water. Mornings were quiet, honest. I slept through the night without locking the door out of fear. Justice didn't feel like a win. It felt like finally standing on solid ground, and knowing no one could take it from me again. For most of my life, I thought staying quiet meant staying safe. But I was wrong. Being family doesn't give anyone the right to control you, erase you, or shut you down. Love isn't something you prove by staying obedient. And protecting yourself? That's not selfish. That's survival. If anyone's ever made you feel unstable, ungrateful, or invisible just for standing up for yourself, believe me, you're not imagining it. If this story hit home for you, drop a comment and let me know. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next story, where the truth comes out and finally wins.